New Orleans Saints rumors, 5. Count them, 5. Dennis Allen replacements for the 2025 NFL season. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here. Chat Now Saints or Chat Sports Saints or whatever it's called. This is a conversation that I have all the time. All right, people ask me, whether it's in the comments, whether it's on my stream, they say, what if we fire Dennis Allen? They say, what if we win 9 games? Will we fire Dennis Allen? What if we win 8 games? Will we fire Dennis Allen? What if we miss the playoffs? Will the Saints fire Dennis Allen? And I want to really make this clear, which I have a feeling I will throughout this video, of why firing Dennis Allen is a little harder for the New Orleans Saints than you may think. But I'm going to let Trace take it from here. Trace, what the hell is that shirt, my guy? This is a controversial yet brave outfit. I mean, he looks like an extra in Game of Thrones. What is this?
What's going on, Saints fans? Hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Currently, I'm on PTO. I'm on vacation. But I wanted to get you guys some videos, and I wanted to get you guys some coverage. So in today's show, we're going to be talking about Dennis Allen replacements, not for this season, but for the 2025 season. So we're looking ahead. Right. It's July. It's hard to come up with content and come up with topics to discuss. So
not me. Every day. I'm rocking and rolling.
So we're just going to have some fun and look ahead for the New Orleans Saints. But I want a few things on the record. For the record, I am not rooting for Dennis Allen to lose his job. Shocking, I know.
All right, so let's stop here. There's a couple of universal truths you have to have in this conversation. Universal truth number 1. If Dennis Allen is fired, the Saints have to be bad. All right, the Saints can't be good and you fire Dennis Allen. All right, that is a universal truth. Universal truth number 2. If Dennis Allen is fired, the entire defensive staff is also fired. Okay? Keep those truths in mind.
Oh, but I do not want Dennis Allen to get fired. Because if Dennis Allen doesn't get fired, that means the Saints were a good football team.
That's right.
So I'm not rooting for Dennis Allen to lose his job. I'm rooting for my team to win football games. I am also rooting for this football team to improve. I don't care who's the head coach. I don't care who's calling plays. I want my football team to win games, make it to the playoffs, and hoist Lombardi trophies. Okay. And finally, it is not a mystery. It is something we have to acknowledge. It is a fact. Dennis Allen, his seat might be hotter than just about anyone's in the...
No doubt. He is on the hot seat. He is on one of the hottest seats in the entire league. That is a fact as well.
National Football League. So that is something that you have to address and something that we have to consider. So I don't want everyone coming after me being like, you hate Dennis Allen, get him off the field, blah, 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 blah. It's a fact. He's on the hot seat.
Yeah, he is on the hot seat. No doubt.
That's why you tune in.
100%.
Fire Dennis Allen. Let's make the case for firing him in terms of him as a head coach.
Okay. Yeah, he's been bad, right? Saints record, not great. Not as bad as you may think. Like, again, Dennis Allen, we all hear about his head coaching record, all of that. Allen had the problematic year, the 7-win season. That was his worst season in New Orleans. He did bump up last year to 9-8. So the team has improved from 7-10 to 9-8 over those couple of years. Dennis Allen's first year ever to have a team over 500. Now record's not good, right? You cannot be below 500 for an extended period of time. Allen did come in at a weird time. Comes in after Drew Brees, after Sean Payton, obviously. Comes in a real transitionary period for the New Orleans Saints. He also, the first thing they tried to do was hand the ball to Jameis Winston. They tried to give Jameis Winston the team and make him the franchise quarterback. Didn't work, all right? He got hurt. Now, when a quarterback gets hurt like that, it's kind of like, well, what do you expect, right? Like, your starting quarterback got hurt, then you start rolling out just whoever to try and survive the season, okay? Then it happens again, and you go with Andy Dalton, okay? Andy Dalton's no great shakes as well, but he's a guy who's going to guide you to just bang average to below average, whatever. But still, it's like we still haven't seen him play. We still haven't seen Dennis play with a full deck, okay? Then Derek Carr happens, all right? Derek Carr happens, get back to 9-8, obviously better than Jameis Winston, obviously better than Andy Dalton, but Pete Carmichael completely fails. He had been failing, but then it got too much. So, arguably, this year barring injuries, this year probably will be the first true situation where it's like, all right, let's see what Dennis can do. Because now you got your quarterback. Now you got your offensive coordinator. Okay, now let's see. So this year is a huge prove-it year because all those variables of the injuries and the Pete Carmichael and the leftovers from Sean Payton and whatever are gone. This is Dennis Allen's team.
With the New Orleans Saints.
For the first time in his
tenure.
tenure.
He has an overall record of 16-18, not quite at 500, and you wish that would be a little bit better. Don't really want to focus in on his Raiders tenure because that was so long ago. I'm more concerned about what he's doing for my team right now, so that's why I'm including his Saints record. But obviously, with the Raiders, he struggled big time there as well.
No doubt.
He also displayed some poor leadership at times. And
leadership, yeah, for sure. He threw players under the bus. We all know what happened with the Jameis Winston thing at the end of the season. All that's true. How much of that was because of, the Carmichael situation and some of the coaches on the staff and the assistants and just the culture? Like, again, we have to assume that the culture is changed. We got rid of some players who seemingly were culture problems. We got rid of all the assistants. We got rid of all these coaches. Like, okay, again, like, is that a Dennis Allen problem? Is that just how the building was problem? We don't know. All right, so, but I don't blame anyone for thinking it's a Dennis Allen problem.
Throwing players under the bus, apologizing to Arthur Smith and the Falcons, and
that was
sure,
bad.
it might be the professional thing to do, but at the end of the day, when you're trying to win your fan base over,
that was bad. That was really
been
been
a great coach.
That was
kind of
awful.
keep some of that in mind. And on top of that, the NFL is an offensive league, so the league is not favoring defenses. It is so.
It is an offensive league, 100%. It's an offensive league. It's been an offensive league for a little while now. Now, that does not mean that there's not a room for defensive coaches. I've said this a million times. If you have a defensive coach or a coach that's not exactly a play caller like Dan Campbell, you better have the assistants. Now more than ever, it's an assistant-driven league. 1997, the Broncos, Packers, those are like your best teams in the NFL. Who are their offensive coordinators? You don't know. Who is their defensive coordinators? You don't know, right? The Dallas Cowboys, one of the best dynasties in the NFL history. Who was their offensive coordinator in the late 90s? You don't know, right? No clue. The Carolina Panthers went to the Super Bowl with Jake Delhomme. Who was their offensive coordinator? I don't know. Point is, back then, it was the head coach and the head coach only. The head coach took care of everything. The coordinators didn't matter. Now, you can name virtually every offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. Ben Johnson for the Lions rumors was he was about to get like $15 million a year if he became a head coach. Okay, Shane Steichen, Jonathan Gannon, the Eagles go to the Super Bowl. Boom, next year they're both head coaches and they're both successful. Bobby Slowick, Houston Texans. Clint Kubiak wasn't even an offensive coordinator. Okay, Zach Robinson for the Rams. So we know all these coordinators now. Coordinators are important. It's a very specific league. Offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, all that is very important. So just because Dennis Allen is a defensive coach doesn't mean that you can't have an offensive emphasis on your staff. Okay? Just like the Lions. The Lions are one of the best offenses in the NFL. They're one of the most fun to watch offenses. Dan Campbell doesn't know anything about offense. DeMeco Ryans is a defensive coach. DeMeco Ryans should have been the coach of the year last year. His job was to fix the Houston Texans defense. But what does everyone talk about? C.J. Stroud's progression, the Houston Texans offense. That's because of Bobby Slowick. DeMeco Ryans isn't calling offensive plays. DeMeco Ryans isn't developing C.J. Stroud. That is the job of Bobby Slowick. On some cases, sure. Like the Rams. Yeah, Sean McVay is the head coach. He's also the offensive coordinator. Sure. San Francisco, same thing. But don't get stuck with like, this head coach is the defensive coordinator, thus the offense is bad, or vice versa. It's not always true.
Apparent because of the rule changes, because of how quick they are to throw penalties and stuff, that the offense that the league just likes catering to the offensive side of the ball. It gets highlights, it gets people to watch, and
that has nothing to do with Dennis Allen.
But why do you keep Dennis Allen? I think he's a smart defensive mind, and to be quite honest, you're not going to get to keep him on a demotion. That brings.
Yeah, that does not happen. That's something people throw out there. Like, what if he just goes back to being the DC? That does not happen. That is not an option. Never has happened. Never will happen. not an option. The smart defensive mind. This is another universal truth. Our friend, Stephen Patton Analytics, last year after Week 18, had Dennis Allen as the number 1 graded defensive play caller in the NFL. So we'll just call it what it is. He is the best defensive coordinator, the best defensive play caller, the best defensive mind in the NFL. Keep that in mind as well.
Brings me to this point right here. If you want to move on from Dennis Allen as your head coach, that's fine. But that means you lose him as your defensive play caller and your defensive coordinator. And Dennis Allen is one of the best defensive play callers in the league. He is also one of the best at developing defensive backs. And I think that there is an argument to be made for Dennis Allen to stick around with the New Orleans Saints. Randy Lemoyne, I see your generous donation in the live chat. I got to just say thank you so much, my man.
Oh, this must be a live stream.
Here in a few minutes. But really quick reminder, subscribe for Dennis Allen news and updates.
Subscribe for Dennis Allen news and updates. What a sell. Imagine being like, I'm going to subscribe to this channel for daily Dennis Allen news and updates. That is a crazy sentence.
If he has press conferences, if he has any sort of buzz around him getting fired and the Saints moving off for him, we're going to make a video. We're going to keep you informed, and we're going to make sure you guys know what's going on around your favorite football team. So subscribe right now and join the channel. But what say you? I'm going to give you 5 replacements here in just 1 second. But what will happen with Dennis Allen after this season? Do you think he gets fired? Do you think the Saints keep him around? I want you to share your thoughts in the comment section and let me know. We're going to have a conversation. 5 Dennis Allen replacements. Let's get a little bit weird.
Okay.
So the first one, it's an obvious one. Klint Kubiak.
Okay, now this one is everyone's favorite one, right? This is your first thought. Why not Klint Kubiak? Let's go back to the universal truths. Let's go back to the Sudoku puzzle. If Dennis Allen's getting fired, that means the Saints are bad. If the Saints are bad, why would you promote your first-year OC to head coach? Well, maybe the defense is bad, but the offense is good. If the offense is good, the Saints are going to be good. The defense is not going to be so bad that a good Saints offense is going to lead to a bad Saints team to where you're going to fire Dennis Allen but promote Klint Kubiak. This one, it seems like the easy choice, but it's the most hard to imagine. In what universe would this happen? Why would you fire Dennis Allen? And the Saints are bad, but they're somehow, even though they're bad, they're not bad enough to where you wouldn't want to promote Klint Kubiak. So even though Kubiak is it makes sense, right? People think it makes sense. It makes zero sense. It's really difficult to find a place because if Kubiak is good and the Saints offense is good, then Derek Carr is probably good. If Derek Carr is probably good, that's Dennis Allen's guy, right? Then the Saints are good. You're not going to fire the guy who brought Derek Carr in if Derek Carr is good under Klint Kubiak, who's good. It does not fit. Kubiak getting promoted might make sense down the road, sure. But it doesn't make sense for what we're talking about right now in a 2025 situation.
He is the Saints offensive coordinator right now. They just brought him in from the San Francisco 49ers. He was the pass game coordinator. He has experience as a play caller with the Minnesota Vikings. And Klint Kubiak, it is the obvious choice. It is the obvious in the here it is. What more do you want? He's in the team. He knows what's going on. It's an obvious choice. But my question is he the best choice?
He has yet to call a play. Think about that, guys. He has not called a play for the Saints, and we're already trying to promote him to head coach. It isn't the obvious choice. It makes no sense at all.
I'm not saying he is. I'm not saying he isn't. I just want to see right now what there are in this moment in time. I want to see what his offense is capable of doing with this team, with the current quarterback, with the current weapons.
Oh, and it also would be the same thing, the same problem we had when we made Dennis Allen the head coach. If we fired Dennis Allen, we would assume the defense is problematic. If we promoted Klint Kubiak, we haven't addressed that at all. So then you got to go find a defensive coordinator who somehow is going to make the defense better than Allen could have, even though Allen is the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. When we lost Sean Payton, the problem was that we promoted Dennis Allen. Sean Payton's an offensive coach. We should have went and looked for an offensive coach to replace Sean Payton. we had a Sean Payton hole in the roof, and we didn't fill it. We had a Drew Brees hole in the roof, and we didn't fill it. So then whenever Carmichael failed, it was like, well, what do we can't fire Dennis Allen. It's not his fault. It's not his fault the offense is garbage, right? But you knew that was going to happen. You knew the offense was going to take a step back because Peyton left. But you didn't try and fill the offense. You filled more defense. You filled more Dennis Allen. You said, okay, it's like having two glasses. Defense glass, offense glass. Offense glass is empty. You poured more water into the defensive glass. That didn't do anything for the offensive glass. That would be the same situation here. Defense, offense. Defensive glass would be empty. You'd pour more into the offensive glass with Kubiak being a head coach. You still haven't addressed the defensive problem.
See if it works and if it's a good fit. So Kubiak's path, it's been really, really good. He comes from a very, very experienced tree of football minds. He's the son of Gary Kubiak, who's an NFL legend. He also was the pass game coordinator and the quarterbacks coach in Denver for some time, was the OC and quarterbacks coach for Minnesota. He has experience as a play caller, and he is a part of the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, which is so respected and so coveted. A lot of coaches, a lot of young coaches coming out of the McVay and Shanahan tree, and I think that those are the two best to pull from right now. So, number 2, should do this actually. Number 2, Ben Johnson.
All right, Ben Johnson's the man. Ben Johnson's awesome. I love Ben Johnson. But now, let's go back to the Sudoku puzzle. If you fire Dennis Allen and you replace him with Ben Johnson, what do you do with Clint Kubiak? You fire Clint Kubiak? Because now think about what this means. This means you're firing Dennis Allen. If you are hiring Ben Johnson, you're firing Clint Kubiak. You don't bring in an offensive head coach with having at this point, a 1-year experienced offensive coordinator. Ben Johnson is going to bring in his own guys. So if you fire Dennis Allen, again, the Saints are bad because you're firing Dennis Allen. If you're bringing in Ben Johnson, it's because the Saints' offense was bad, seemingly. There was a problem with the offense. You want to get better with the offense. Clint Kubiak, you don't have enough faith in him, so you have to go get an offensive guy. So you're firing your defensive coordinator / head coach in Dennis Allen and his entire defensive staff. You're going to fire Clint Kubiak and his entire offensive staff a year after bringing them on to go get Ben Johnson, who's going to have to come in as the head coach, fill out his offensive staff, and fill out his defensive staff. Oh, and Ben Johnson's an offensive guy. He's not going to want Derek Carr. Derek Carr's not his guy. What about Spencer Rattler? What about all these guys you just drafted? What about Talise Fuaga? You drafted him to fit a specific scheme. Ben Johnson's going to want his guys. So bringing in Ben Johnson is even messier because, again, the universal truth, Saints are bad to fire Dennis Allen. So if they're bad and you fire Dennis Allen, but you get an offensive guy, that also means Clint Kubiak was probably bad, right? So Ben Johnson's a cool name, but again, does not make any sense.
Talking about him once again. Because he stuck around in Detroit despite a lot of rumors and a lot of discussion of he could be the next great young head coach. He should get a head coaching job this year. Well, back in May, he informed people that he was actually sticking around in Detroit. And this is an interesting reasoning for staying in Detroit. They're a young, talented team. They're finding success. They're really starting to find their movement, and I think that is a good team to invest yourself in if you are a coach. But Ari Merov put this tweet out.
If you're Ben Johnson, you definitely don't want to go to a team salary cap restricted with at that time, 34-year-old failing quarterback. Because again, universal truth, if we're firing Dennis Allen, Derek Carr's been bad. The Saints have been bad. So why would Ben Johnson choose here with an aging Alvin Kamara, an aging Derek Carr, an aging infrastructure of a roster? He could go anywhere. Ben Johnson more than likely will be the highest coveted coaching coaching prospect in the league.
Ben Johnson explained why he stayed in Detroit instead of taking a head coach position. He mentioned that of the 8 openings this offseason, 5 of those hires will likely be gone in the next 3 years. He wants to be sure he can secure a second contract as a head coach, and his situation in Detroit is too good to leave for just any job.
Yeah. Johnson was smart to
answer. So when this tweet went out, I replied with this picture. Ben Johnson, you are a New Orleans Saint. Ben Johnson, you are the future head coach of the Black and Gold. Ben Johnson, you are going to help my football team win a Super Bowl. I think Ben Johnson would be an excellent coach. I think he'd be a really good addition. And the fact that he isn't just taking any job, I'm not sitting here saying that the Saints are the best job for him to go and take.
Again, like this happens all the time. I think Ben Johnson is an A-plus coach. I love Ben Johnson. He doesn't fit the Saints situation. I think Patrick Mahomes is a great quarterback. We can't trade for Patrick Mahomes. So saying like, who would be the next Saints quarterback if we cut Derek Carr? How about number one, Patrick Mahomes? So that's not, he's sweet, but it's not possible. It's not realistic. The Ben Johnson next year isn't realistic because of all the universal truths we just laid out. Now, Ben Johnson, a couple years down the road, if somehow, some other pieces moved around and the Saints ended up 3 years from now having the first overall pick and, Carr is gone and we had already fired Allen and then we had already moved on from, whatever. A lot of moving pieces happen. Yeah, maybe Ben Johnson comes here. But as far as next year, how that would shake out when you factor in the Kubiak, Janoko, all their offensive staff coming in last year or this offseason, doesn't make any sense.
But I will say, if he does get fired, if Dennis Allen does get fired, the Saints are an appealing option at the bare minimum. And Johnson, he has been with the Detroit Lions since 2019. He first joined as the offensive quality control coach and has bumped his way up.
If Trace doesn't mention the fact that how would we have Ben Johnson come on as head coach with Clint Kubiak sitting there as the offensive coordinator? Like, if that's not mentioned, I'm going to absolutely lose my mind.
The tiki, what is it? Up the what? The pecking order. What? The totem pole. I was thinking tiki. I was like, what am I thinking? He's climbed the totem pole is what I'm trying to say. The Lions' yards per game and the points per game last season, elite. They were number 2 in yards per game, and they were number 5 in points per game. That right there alone should make you interested in Ben Johnson. And he does have 2 years of offensive.
If you were really interested in Ben Johnson, you would have made this move last year.
Of coordinating experience. So
you would have fired Allen, brought Johnson in, never hired Kubiak, let Johnson handle the offense, find the defensive coordinator. That's what you would have done.
I think that he is one of the next great young head coaches in the league, and I would love for the New Orleans Saints to go get him. But I want you to look ahead for me. Will Ben Johnson leave Detroit after this season?
We got to put what we think is going to happen to Allen. We got to put what will Ben Johnson leave Detroit.
2025 offseason. Just type stay or leave in the comment section. Can't wait to see
what is Trace's shirt made out of.
So
another we got a lot of comments.
Girouard Johnson.
All right, Girouard Johnson was, I think, interviewed for the Saints offensive coordinator position. Again, why would you hire a guy who you didn't hire for your offensive coordinator position to then a year later hire him as he's the Texans quarterback coach? Again, you chose Clint Kubiak over this guy for your OC. 12 months later, you're going to get this guy to be the head coach over Clint Kubiak? And again, you're not fixing the defense at all.
Yeah. I went for the quarterback's coach. I didn't go for Bobby Sloak. I want Girouard Johnson. And I'm going to tell you why here in just a second. I'm not rooting for Dennis Allen to lose his job, but I am rooting for a guy like Girouard Johnson to get another job because he is a really, really interesting coach. And
he has a job.
The fact that he was a player on top of that really is something that I like. I do believe that the NFL, they're starting to really value player-to-coach transitions, and I think that we have seen a handful of really good examples of that. And in 2023,
I think that's the dumbest thing in the world. I've always said that. People who are like, you can't be a coach unless you played. Imagine needing like gallbladder surgery and having the greatest doctor in the world, and you'd be like, wait a minute, wait. Have you ever had gallbladder surgery? And the doctor's like, no, I've never had gallbladder surgery. It's like, well, I don't really trust you to do this. I want a doctor who has had gallbladder surgery. Why the hell would that matter? You don't think the years and years of studying and the research and all of that, and you don't think that is more important than actually physically experiencing gallbladder surgery? Why? Who cares? Like, I think it's the opposite. I think now, we're closer to coaches or coordinators or whatever being like MIT like quantitative analysis kind of people over someone who played, because a lot of the time someone who played is very boxed in. They're in a very football mindset. Someone from the outside comes at it from a very different approach, and that's how you evolve. I would much rather Mike McDaniel, who does not have NFL experience to the level of someone like Mike Singletary did when he coached for the 49ers. But I would much rather McDaniel's brain, and I could care less that he wasn't a 1,000-yard or a 3,000-yard passing quarterback or a 1,000-yard wide receiver. I don't care. He's proven that he understands the game enough that playing doesn't matter. Playing can be a bonus, I guess. But I think that I put zero stock into if a player played in the NFL.
It was extremely crucial to C.J. Stroud's development, and C.J. Stroud was one of the best quarterbacks, not the best rookies, one of the.
It's another thing. Like how crucial was he? Because you have Bobby Slowick, so it's the same thing we talked about with Liam Cohen going from the Rams to the Buccaneers, where a lot of people are like, "Oh, well, Liam Cohen was with the Rams. The Rams do this, and this." It's like, well, yeah, they have Sean McVay. Like Sean McVay I have a sneaky feeling it's the Pete Carmichael syndrome, where you look at Pete Carmichael like, oh, well, he was the OC for the Saints for 15 years. He should be able to do it. And then it's like, well, actually, it was 99% Sean Payton. Pete Carmichael did absolutely nothing. So we see it time and time again where not every coach on the team is as crucial to that side of the ball as you may think. I mean, in some situations, sure. Like, I'm not saying Girouard Johnson isn't, but I'm just saying how sometimes, it doesn't fall from the top.
The best quarterbacks in the league last season. And in 2022, he was with Minnesota as a part of the Vikings coaching staff as the assistant quarterbacks coach under Kevin O'Connell, who is another really well-respected NFL mind. And he was a player that turned to a coach, and he started under Kyle Shanahan. Again, coming from that Shanahan coaching tree. Now, you might be asking yourself, but Trace, what about Bobby Slowick? He's the offensive coordinator. The Texans offense was really good. Why would you not want the guy who was the play caller and who made it happen?
I cannot wait for this answer.
Actually, I found this pretty surprising, and you might find it too. So the offenses for the New Orleans Saints and for the Houston Texans, Saints fared better in almost every metric on screen right here. The only one that they were worse at was the red zone scoring percentage and getting touchdowns, and it wasn't by a whole lot. And I will say this, I think that Bobby Slowick could be a great head coach, but I love the idea of bringing in a player. And
but if that's the case, then why would you want Girouard Johnson? Like if your argument is that the Texans weren't that much better than the Saints, you just tried to tell me why you wanted Girouard Johnson to be the head coach. Not to mention, this is an unfair graphic because you would have to factor in 2022's offense as well. Because if the Texans were 32nd, 31st, 30th, 32nd, 31st in all these metrics in 2022, and then they jumped up from bottom 30s bottom 30s to these numbers, it's an enormous jump. The Texans won 3 games, I think, in 2022. So you can't just look at this and be like, oh, well, they were only the 13th points per game. It's like, well, yeah, but they were 32 the year before. That was an enormous jump. The Saints might not have jumped that high, so you have to factor that in as well.
Of bringing in a player. And Girouard Johnson, he was one of the best quarterbacks in Texas A&M history.
Well, bring in Manziel. Let Manziel be the coach then. Let Tebow. Here, fill the staff up with Tebow, Johnny Manziel, and Drew Brees, and just do it like that. Yeah, just do it like that. Let LeBron James coach the Pelicans. Call Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan, he greatest basketball player to ever live. We saw what kind of success he had as a roster builder in Charlotte. Spoiler alert, 0 succce.
Before he got benched for Ryan Tannehill, who eventually took over.
One of the greatest Texas A&M quarterbacks of all time before he got benched. I mean, why are we factoring his Texas A&M playing career into this?
Johnson, he was on a bunch of different practice squads, a bunch of different preseason squads and whatnot, and never really got any like real NFL reps.
Yeah, cool.
At the end of the day, but I mean, when he was the quarterback one for the Aggies from 2008 to 2010, he had 8,011 passing yards and 8,888 total yards of offense. He was third in total offense behind Johnny
brother, why does that matter? It doesn't matter. This is crazy. I cannot believe I'm watching this. I mean, we are on Gerard Johnson's career stats at Texas A&M. Let Cam Newton coach the Saints.
Denzel and Kellen Mond, and second in passing yards only behind Kellen Mond for the Texas A&M Aggies. So, I mean, the guy knows how to throw the ball. He knows how to communicate to players, and I like the idea of bringing in a former player as a coach. Now, here's another option. If you want to stay defensive-minded.
Okay, Flores is the best of this four, or not the best of the four, but the most realistic of the four, because if you fired Allen, if Kubiak's good enough, you would stick with him. Bring in Flores. Flores does have head coaching experience. He could fix the culture. Now, this is one of those things where Allen, I keep saying Allen's the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. If the Saints' culture is failing and Allen cannot do the logistical things that a head coach needs to do, then yeah, you probably do have to make a change regardless of how good he is as a defensive coach. You can't just win 6, 7, 8 games all the time and be like, well, he's a great defensive coach. There are parts of being a head coach that are logistics, and yeah, there's some analytics too, but there's so much logistical stuff and just being a leader, being a man manager, everything from travel, lining up your flights. When are you going to travel? How are you going to travel? When are you going to practice? How are you going to practice? All of that stuff, the motivating factors of how are you going to lead your team, be a leader of men, does the locker room respect you? If all of that is failing, yes, you do have to move on from Allen. Flores might be able to fix that. Flores is a guy who has had head coaching experience. He is seemingly a culture builder, and he is a good defensive coordinator. He has been a good DC. Is he as good as Dennis Allen? Arguable, but he might be better at the head coaching stuff and might balance it all out. So Flores actually is, finally, one of the ones that makes some sense. The only thing would be Kubiak. If you fire Dennis Allen, is the offense good enough to retain Kubiak? Let's just say for this argument, yes. Then yeah, Flores does make some sense. Flores is a guy who you bring in, much like Peterson in Jacksonville. When Urban Meyer left, they needed someone to just build the culture. They needed someone to show those guys, this is how you are. This is how you behave as an NFL team. It's someone who, this is how we're going to travel. This is how we're going to do stuff. This is how we're going to act. And that was most important for that hire, was just getting them back to being an NFL franchise. Firing Allen, this is what this would be. Brian Flores would come in to just stabilize the team, stabilize the franchise, make them an NFL team again, be an actual head coach in the room.
I don't blame you. I think that maybe this could be an option. Brian Flores.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that he was pretty solid when he was with the Miami Dolphins. And I'm not going to sit here and make an argument saying that the Brian Flores is the best option, because I do believe if you were to go with a defensive-minded coach, you're still in the situation you're currently in. You would still require smart offensive coach. Yeah, you wouldn't be able to get away with a subpar play call.
Damn, man, this is crazy. But you're not in the same situation, because if you're firing Dennis Allen, then you're hoping to get a better head coach. You're hoping to get a better leader of men, all that stuff. Kubiak could potentially be okay. Kubiak could potentially be boosting the offense a little bit. The offense could be taking an incremental bump, but the Saints win 8 games. It's not good enough. Allen loses the locker room. There is a world where you don't need to address the offensive staff. You don't need to address the OC. You don't need to address all that. Kubiak's doing just a good enough job. So that's not you would have to replace Allen. He's a defensive guy. So you do have to, offense would still need a good coach. Sure. Hopefully that's Clint Kubiak, but defense literally would not have a coach because you just fired Dennis Allen. So your first order of business is replacing the defensive side of the ball.
Or on the offensive.
Unless you are firing Dennis Allen, the entire defensive staff, and Clint Kubiak and the entire offensive staff. That would be nuts.
Side of the ball. But when it comes to Brian Flores and what he could offer for the defense, if you get rid of Dennis Allen, sure, you're missing a respected mind and a respected defensive coach. But to replace him with Brian Flores, who his defense in 2023, the Vikings in 2022 to 2023 took a massive leap.
Flores just blitzes. That's what Flores is all about. He's all about blitzing, playing man, coming at you.
In terms of their defensive production and how well that they fared. And as a head coach, Brian Flores, he spent 3 years with the Miami Dolphins, and kind of surprising his 2021 year, he ended up getting fired. There's lawsuits and stuff, that's not football necessarily that I'm not going to talk about, but there were things that happened.
Yeah, quick math. What is this? This is 24, 24-25. So you look at like his record as a Dolphins head coach, Dennis Allen's record as a Saints head coach. You got to remember, like some of these guys, even like Raheem Morris with the Falcons. Raheem Morris has like a 13 games under 500 record as a head coach. Usually, if you're not a head coach, it's because you weren't successful as a head coach. This is pretty brutal to go from 5-11 to 10-6 and then 9-8 and get fired, but
happened. But let's not forget that Brian Flores went on what, an 8-game win streak to end this 2021 season. Like, it's kind of wild. I
8-game winning streak, so he was 1-8 at one point.
He ended with a losing record, but to
Surprised
win 8 games in a row, that's insane to fire him, in my opinion. But I can understand why he may not want to go with a defensive-minded coach, considering this is an offense-driven league. But
oh my God, I knew it. I just looked ahead. I knew.
Well. So
I cannot
which
believe
style of
who I'm
coach do you
seeing.
prefer? Just
Damn, I got to answer another question.
Or defensive in the comment section.
Is Dennis Allen going to get fired? What was the other one? Is Rod Johnson something? And then what style of head coach? What's going on here?
All right, fifth and final one. Let's clap it up. Drew motherfucking Brees.
Jesus
That's
Christ.
right. We're talking about him because the former quarterback, I'm not sitting here saying it's realistic. I'm trying to have some fun with it. It's July. Let us have some fun with the offseason.
I'm not having fun.
I mean, he does have coaching experience. This isn't like an absolutely like, man, this guy he's coached. He didn't coach well, but he was in.
This would be so dumb. I mean, it's not even possible. It's not realistic. They would hire me before that. I mean, it's in the same breath. Like, he's never coached. So you're going to. And again, he's an offensive guy. So you're going to fire Allen, bring in Drew Brees next year. Because remember, this is for the 2025 season. Bring in Drew Brees next year. Drew Brees has absolutely no clue what he's doing. Whew, what a mistake this would be.
An interim assistant coach
again,
for the Purdue
realistic.
Boilermakers whenever they played in the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl against LSU and Jamar Chase and absolutely got waxed.
Yeah, they got
that being said,
dog walked.
He has coaching experience. And to be honest, I don't think it's realistic, but I really do think it would be sick to see Drew Brees coach this team.
I wouldn't. I think it would be stupid. I think it would be a dumb decision. I think it would make no sense at all. It would make me sick to my stomach. I'd vomit all over my shoes.
I mean, he's the greatest player that's ever worn a fleur-de-lis. He is it's hard to argue that he won't always be the greatest player that's ever repped the black and gold. And if he could somehow go from being the greatest player in franchise history to being a coach, and he's a good coach, I mean, that would be so cool. But obviously it comes down to whether or not he wants to go back into the booth, whether or not he wants to take time away from his family to get back involved in football.
Or if he actually wants to coach. He has never done this. Like, it would also require him to actually try and do the thing that you're asking him to do.
No, he is a very family-oriented guy, so I don't think it's realistic, but there's no denying it. It would be freaking awesome to see Drew Brees coach this New Orleans Saints. But it's your turn, Saints fans. Who do you want to be the next head coach of?
Damn, another question? We got 5 questions we got to answer in the comment section? Good Lord. Ladies and gentlemen, I mean, God, videos like this makes me love what I do even more. Glad to be able to provide the content for all of you. It's a tricky situation, firing Dennis Allen, because it requires the Saints to be bad, but not so bad to where Kubiak is fired. Allen, what should have happened when we lost Peyton was we should have hired an offensive guy, retained Allen as the DC, and tried to fix the offense. Loomis made a mistake by trying to hold on to the Sean Payton, I guess, the ideas or the philosophy or whatever. And it just turned out that he had a bunch of deadbeats as coaches on his staff. And it happens. It happens. Like, you know, it's not always where the master is teaching the prodigy and the prodigy is in the building. Like, sometimes people are just riding the coattails of somebody else. It's obvious that Carmichael and company were riding the coattails of Sean Payton. And we saw what happened when Sean Payton didn't have the defensive guy. When he didn't have Dennis Allen, when they didn't have a good defense, when he was trying to control the defense, those were the 7-win years. So Sean was almost exclusively, I'll say it, he was exclusively coaching the offense. So to lose that, to lose the guy, to lose the main idea maker offensively and not replace it was crazy. And it also is perfect timing to do it because you also lost Brees. So you could say, well, we lose Brees and then we lose Peyton. Okay. So then would have been the perfect time to bring in a new offense. It would have been the perfect time to bring in a totally new offensive, a whole new offensive idea. Because you like, if Breeze is still there, it makes sense. Like, okay, let's just try and do the same thing. Like, Breeze knows it. He could probably run it. But you also lost Breeze. Or you lost Breeze, before Peyton. But you lost Breeze, then Peyton. So at that point, like, not only is the mind, not only is the idea is not there, but the person who was running it isn't there. That would have been the perfect time to go way outside the box, bring in a whole new set of offensive ideas, retain Allen as your DC, and then try and try and nail the new offensive ideas. We didn't do that. We tried to, like I said, y'all know how this all played out. We tried to have Jameis figure it out, and then we tried to have Andy Dalton figure it out, and then we tried to have Derek Carr figure it out, and then eventually it was like, all right, this just isn't going to work. Like this old idea with the new regime, it's not going to work. So thank God, it only took a couple of years for Mickey to realize that it just wasn't going to work, because it could have been a whole lot worse. But the whole point is, it's much more difficult to fire Dennis Allen than I think people believe. And it's much more difficult to imagine the Saints in a situation where you would fire Allen but keep Kubiak or whatever. And then, again, only one of the people that Trace mentioned is even like remotely realistic. Brian Flores is the only one that's remotely realistic. The other ones aren't. So that's another thing to think about when you're thinking about Bobby Sloak and Ben Johnson and whoever else. Like, that's really not the answer. Like Mike McDonald that just went from Baltimore to Seattle, he's the kind of guy that would be like the answer. D'Amico Ryans, obviously not literally D'Amico Ryans, but someone like D'Amico Ryans, he would be your answer. So if you're hoping for Ben Johnson or hoping for Drew Brees or hoping for whoever like that, you're already missing the mark. So I'm not saying it can't happen, because if we win 7 games, 6 games, probably will fire Allen. But we're not going to go look for Ben Johnson as a replacement. Ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comments below what you thought about this. Any thoughts? I'll be down there replying. I appreciate it. I will see you in the next video.